every concussion's got its unique nuances. And they say if you've seen one concussion, you've seen one concussion. So we all know when a kid gets hit, they got a concussion. It's what do you do with it? And how I handle one for you and the next person can be totally different.
Dr. Koutures was a team physician for USA Volleyball, the U.S. Figure Skating Sports Medicine Network. In 2008, Dr. Koutures fulfilled his lifelong dream of serving as the medical team physician for USA Volleyball and table tennis in the 2008 Beijing Summer Olympics. Okay, welcome to Tales from the Shift, Dr. Chris Koutures. How are you, sir?
I'm great. I really appreciate this opportunity to sit down and talk. So thank you for the invitation.
So you're a pediatric and sports medicine specialist. Why don't you just basically tell us what that's about?
I get the privilege of working with young families, and this can be from newborns through collegiate level, even Olympic level athletes. And I get the opportunity to watch them grow and develop. We deal with just about everything from illness to injuries to child checks. We try to cover the bases from physical and emotional health. And I think it just gives me a unique way to connect, especially when we're starting to talk about the adolescent, the kid who, does anybody really want to go to the doctor? You talk about the adolescent who really does not want to be there, but when you can connect about something they're passionate, their sport, their dance, something that they do on a regular basis, it gives you a little bit of credibility in their mind. And it gives you a chance, I think, to then deal with other factors in their life that they may not be as forthcoming. So I just enjoy the opportunity to have that longitudinal relationship from the time they come in, almost virtually dependent on their parent, till they're 18, driving in, talking, and pretty much running their own affairs.
So obviously you went to medical school, you went to the basic medical school, and then they have you try different things out, right? I mean, did you gravitate towards anything else before this, or?
Great question. As I went through medical school, I tried to keep my mind open. I had come in with a thought, pediatrics and sports were going to be high on my list. And actually, the other field that jumped out was OB-GYN because I liked the combination. You can do a procedure, deliver a baby. You've got some office-based work. You might do a little bit of surgical care. So I thought that's pretty all-encompassing. That's pretty cool. And I was going through the whole thought process and finally came down to having to make a decision. I sat down with one of our associate deans, kind of gave her my dilemma, shall we say. And she said, I think I'm going to ask you one question and you can help decide what you're going to do. I said, go for it. I'm ready. She said, what would you rather see yourself doing after hours? Either 7:30 on the high school football field or 2 a.m. delivering a baby. I said, that's easy. The football field. She goes, there's your answer. And fast forward a few years, my lovely wife is a labor and delivery nurse. And she does work day shift now, but she had to work nights earlier in her career. And sure enough, she had a lot of cranky doctors coming in at 2 a.m. And I think she let me know I made the right decision.
You said before you even started, you were kind of leaning towards pediatrics. Is there a reason that you were already leaning in that direction?
I think I really wanted to work with young people. Young people have this ability to heal, this ability to keep growing. And we have this thought that we can be part of that process. Obviously, we're not going to take the part of a parent, and there's probably trusted coaches and other folks who really have an impact in their upward trajectory. But in the field of medicine, it's one of those areas where you can look and say, I think we made an impact. And these are kids who are learning and hopefully developing healthy skills. So that's what drew me to kids. And the beauty of sports medicine is it combines what you hear when they tell you stuff. You use your physical exam, you use your imaging, and you get a bit creative. You look at, hey, what's going on the next few weeks with your practice schedule? What's the most important event you want to participate in the next 3 months? And what works for one athlete may not work for the next. And then you get to work with a great team. Sports medicine is the ultimate team sport. You get to work with athletic trainers and physical therapists. You get to work with your colleagues. And the more that you communicate, the more you help your athletes. So I just enjoy that whole environment.
If someone said they wanted to get into pediatric sports medicine, is it pretty much the same path you would take, or are there other ways to end up in this role?
There are probably other ways, but the most of my colleagues who do this thing went to medical school, did a pediatric residency, did a 1 or 2 year fellowship or additional training in sports medicine, and then found some kind of job in the field. And that's where I think you learn most everything is once you're in the real world and you're having to make decisions and follow people day to day and make relationships. So those are the pathways that most people take to get into this role.
Okay. And when they have you try other things, like let's say an emergency room rotation, like how much time did you have to spend in each little facet?
Going through either medical school residency, you go through intensive care unit experiences, emergency room, outpatient clinic, community clinic. So I would say it was several months of those different experiences. There are times you'll be in the ICU in the morning, but perhaps you have to cross cover on call in the afternoon somewhere else. For the most part, though, if you were in the ICU, you were there pretty much full time because it was a pretty much full time experience. But there are days where, yes, you were running across town, almost switching hats from the community clinic to covering the newborn delivery area. So there were days you had to kind of, what am I doing today? And who am I working with? Uh, and some of those experiences you thought, okay, this is going to really apply to what I want to do. I'm going to be really excited about it. There's sometimes like, okay, I don't think I'm going to do much of this. But everything you still take from and everything you still learn from and people you work with, you found people who I really like the way they handle situations. I want to kind of emulate their approach to people where I don't like how you handle that. And I'm going to learn from you and hopefully never be like that.
Wow. That makes me wonder, is there, I mean, you don't have to obviously say any names, but were there any situations you can remember where someone handled something in a way you didn't like and you took something from that?
There were times where I'll be honest, either they were very short with the patient, almost condescending with the patient, or just didn't put the time in, just didn't either prepare well for the experience, rushed it. I think that's most of the time what I took is look, you got to take the time to prepare and you got to give the patient time to give you their side of the story. The patient has taken their time to come see you, or by sometimes no fault their own, they're in the hospital and it's your job to help treat them. So you have to give them the privilege of, hey, how can I hear from you what's going on and how can I best serve what you need?
So, I mean, I know you're not in that role right now, but how do you think that that's all playing with medical insurance? Because I know that certain like, let's say just general medicine, family practitioner, it seems like they're having to go boom, 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 boom through the patients quickly these days. What do you have an opinion on that?
There's a lot of pressure to see a good number of patients every day. And yeah, it can be tough when you look at your schedule and wow, I've got 20 plus patients on the schedule. And being a small business owner, hey, that's what you need to do to keep this practice functioning. Then you take a step back and say, how can I be more efficient? Usually if I've got a work shift, I'm up at 5:30 and one of my first duties is I open up my charts and I look at my patient and I see what's coming in. And I do that because I'm better prepared. And I want to make sure is every x-ray ready to roll? Do I have a good background story on this app and remind myself why this person's coming in? So it takes a little extra work, but at 5:30, there's not much else going on. So I'm usually pretty focused. And it makes me more efficient during the day. So that's that prep work. And I try to teach younger physicians and medical folks the time you put in before you walk in the room will pay off huge dividends. And the patients, they respond to it. And hey, how's school going? How's 10th grade? How's this? How's that? Now they may know you're reading it right off the screen, but you took the time to at least jot down those notes and at least try to connect.
Okay. Is there anything that fairly common that you see in pediatric sports injuries or what have you that insurance a lot of times is not great at covering?
That could probably be its own podcast by itself. But if you want me to go with the most common things that we struggle with, image. So, athlete has a complex injury. Usually, x ray is not a big deal, but you want to start moving on to MRI or CT. So then we've got to do the dance of pre authorization, limitation in rehab services. We need to send you off to work with the athletic trainer, physical therapist. Oh, you get 5 visits. Great. Mental health, without a doubt, is another huge area. Not on the plan, limited number of visits covered. So I think those are the three areas where we struggle the most: the imaging, the rehab services, and the mental health support. And I'm sure if I asked my staff, they could give me 5 or 10 more.
Do you think that there's a connection between sports injuries and you said mental health? Is there some connection there as what might cause one or the other?
I think they are embedded in each other, either the issues with depression, anxiety, performance anxiety, creating an athlete who might be more tentative, an athlete who's maybe not in the flow, shall we say, higher risk of injury there. And then obviously post injury, the athlete is concerned about their status on the team, being able to walk and get out of bed, being able to go to school, being able to function in the role they've prepared for years. So there's definitely a huge mental health component, either that predates the injury, exists with the injury, and then we have to deal with after the injury.
Okay. So being a pediatric and sports medicine physician, is there anything you might change about that career that you're not happy with if you could fix it overnight?
I think we all would love to see better reimbursement for certain things we do. For example, the mental health evaluations and some of the more complicated concussion care, the more complicated disordered eating. And not just for myself personally, but for my colleagues who do it, because those are more involved cases, take longer time, much more coordination between colleagues. And oftentimes, the reimbursement isn't there. And it makes you have to wonder, how do I serve that patient, but also make sure I keep the lights on? I think the other thing too would be, yes, it would be nice to have a greater appreciation for the mental health demands placed on these young athletes, and how can we, when we identify an issue, get them in sooner, get that paid for, so that way they can get the care. And often, if you pay for it better on the front end, you're not going to pay so much on the back end.
People say that in youth sports, a lot of times parents at this point might be a little too intense. Maybe some parents push their kids a little too hard when they're too young. Do you have any opinion on this? Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, we see all ends of the spectrum. I've got some athletes who have been identified as gifted, put in roles where they are maybe even homeschooled or change their educational environment to be more conducive to their training. So there's a huge investment they and their family are making. Maybe they moved to Orange County to follow a certain coach or to participate in a certain program. So, yes, I've definitely got several athletes who fit that description. I've got many athletes who, when they were younger, really self identified or family identified as an athlete in a certain sport and a certain position. And then fast forward to middle adolescence, they're doing something totally different. And, in some ways, that perspective has changed. I have 3 kids now, all in college. 2 out of the 3 played sports through high school. And, I went to youth sports going, gee, I'm kind of in the field. I kind of have a better appreciation than most families about, where some of the limitations should be. But then when you have your child come back to you and, coach says I should join a travel ball team because I can't hit the curveball, I'm not going to be able to make varsity. And you start thinking, okay, I can definitely see where a family goes, I don't want to give my kid anything less than the best of chances. So I'm going to go ahead and make that decision because I trust the coach and I want to see my kid make varsity. I mean, it's not that huge of a demand. So I could be more appreciative now of what parents are going through and sometimes the demands placed on them. It's not that they're making the wrong decision. It's just that with the experience they have and reasonable goals they want to have for their child, sometimes they will have to push and or really escalate participation. So it's a unique situation. And I try to take each interaction with each family and try to remember that they have different needs, different desires, and try to help them in their particular situation.
Okay. You said some people will actually move to Orange County just for maybe a coach or a sport. Are there certain sports in that area that people might move there for?
I do work with a fair amount of figure skaters. And yes, it's sunny Orange County, California, but we have this beautiful rink in Irvine. And once the rink was created, a host of top level coaches moved to Orange County. As a result, a host of families moved to Orange County, or at least part time live in Orange County so that they could train. So, right off the bat, I could think of several figure skaters who are not from our area but now live here, all because they want to
They
train with figure skating. Obviously, working with our USA volleyball athletes, we have our training base in Anaheim. So we'll have athletes who will move there, but they are post collegiate professional athletes. So I've got that level, but I've also got younger athletes who move because there is that coach, that facility that draws them. So I work with USA Volleyball, and our training base is in Anaheim, California. So you
Yeah,
got
tell us about it.
Duke, and then you've got us, and been working with them for the past, gosh, 20 years. And, life comes around full circle. LA 2028 Olympic Games. And where's volleyball going to be? Anaheim, California at the Honda Center. So I think as an organization, we're just real ecstatic to be able to be playing international volleyball at the Olympic level in essentially our backyard.
Okay. So, Dr. K, would you be willing to talk about say the worst day you ever had on this job, or the best day,
Uh,
or both?
Worst day, I guess I could say, was a Sunday. So it was an off day. A neighbor of mine asked if I would help cover a marathon. So I did because I want to help my neighbor. Was at the finish line when a gentleman finished the race, took a few steps, collapsed, did not make it.
Mm.
And obviously, much emotion immediately thereafter. Come to find out that his kids were in my practice. So that was even heavier of a burden. We tried to piece
Yeah.
together what had happened. We ran through our response, and it was just a difficult situation, obviously, to lose somebody who was out there just trying to finish a marathon and to know that, he would not return home to his family. Pretty tough stuff. So thankfully, those
Yeah.
type of days are few and far in between, but when they do occur, they stick with you.
Yeah. What about best day? Anything come to mind on that?
There are days where you'll see a kid who's been struggling. There are days where, you almost pick up a chart, go, okay, this is going to be a challenging one. And you walk in the door and they've got a smile on their face. I'm better. And you ask them, why do you think you got better? And in your mind, I really don't care. If you're better, that's the best news I'm going to hear. Instead of talking about our next level of treatment or what we're going to do to get, you're going back on the field. Okay, that's great. And you may be playing a game. And just to see the relief, I probably have the same level of relief in my mind too, but the smiles and the excitement, those are the days where you walk out going, all right, this is why we do what we do. And sometimes you'll have a day where you'll have like two or three kids who you've been struggling with, and all three are getting better. I almost want to tell my staff, hey, get on the phone, call about three other families we know we're struggling, get them in today because today is recovery day. For some reason, people are getting better. Not sure if it's the way the moon or stars are aligned, but let's get them in. Every so often, those days where it's not just one, but there's a few that have made significant improvements, and it just makes your day.
Nice. So it sounds like you work with various types of athletes. So, like you said, you mentioned figure skating, volleyball. I'm going to assume there's other ones in there. Does it seem like the injuries are different depending on what sport we're talking about? The repetitive injuries that you're typically seeing. I personally got Osgood Schlatter from when I was a kid playing football, and I'm just curious what you'd say about that.
Yeah, it depends on the sport. If you're working for teams like a baseball or a volleyball, a lot of the shoulder overhead things, we will see the overload injuries, lower back type stuff. If you're starting to move into the football world, you get both the acute, just got hit on the last play, to the chronic, yeah, my knee hurts because I'm running up and down the field. So, yes, every sport brings its own significant subset of injury. And, as you get into the field, you start to learn the different sports, you start to learn the different injury patterns, and it helps to know a little bit of the lingo. That way you kind of connect with the athlete. Several years ago, I got introduced to the dance community, and those are amazing performers. They put in a lot of time. And once you start to learn their movement patterns and the demands they put on their body, you're not shocked when they come in with hip issues, foot issues, knee issues, because they put their hips and their feet and their knees into positions most of us don't. And once you kind of appreciate what point shoes can do to a foot, it's worse than hockey skates. It starts to give you a different perspective. So, yes, every sport, every activity will bring in, you still kind of handle it all the same way. You still get a good history, you still try to get a good exam, but you're kind of thinking, okay, what are you doing every day? What kind of leaping, turning, jumping, gliding? And that can help guide you in the treatment plan that you're going to put together for them.
Is there, are there any sports that come to your mind that you would help your children not going that path? Like you think there's just too many injuries in this sport. Is there any that come to mind on that or?
The sport that comes up is football. And again, I have 3 kids. One of my sons did play football. He played in high school, started in high school, finished in high school. And I get asked all the time, how the heck did you let Greg play football? I said, okay, first and foremost, I sign kids off to play football. We go through risk benefits, but if the family's comfortable, I sign the form. How can I not do that for my own kid? That would be kind of embarrassing and probably not quite the appropriate level of care. I knew that Greg was probably not going to play past high school, and he also played defensive back and receiver, so he wasn't getting hit as much on every play. He also was a multi-sport athlete, so when he was not playing football, he was probably playing baseball. So we, as a family, includes my wife and the other kids, took that risk on. So is there any sport I wouldn't have them play? There's probably not. Now, sometimes to what level? Are we going to go through travel where we're going to take one child away from the rest of the family? That's a decision that every family makes. But yeah, I would say that there's not one sport I would say, hey, I don't think. I mean, there's sports I wish they would play because I enjoy watching them. My daughter played water polo, which is great because highly intense matches that last about a half an hour. It's pretty cool. But I'm not going to say, hey, I'm going to push you that way because I personally like to watch you play. I want to make sure it's something that you actually enjoy as well.
All right, Dr. K, is there a time in your career that you'd be willing to reveal you maybe made a mistake or did something embarrassing in this field?
I've made many mistakes where I perhaps didn't read a report as well as I should have, made a decision that I wish I could take back. That's somewhat human nature. And those are obviously some of your best learning experiences, some of the most painful experiences. Sometimes you look back and go, how the heck was I so negligent, stupid, fill in the blank? And you tend to beat yourself up. And sometimes after that initial emotional rush subsides, you look back, okay, maybe you were just doing the best you could with the information you had at that time. There were a few times where, yeah, okay, next time, read the entire report. Sometimes you're rushing. The families call, hey, what's the report say? And you look at it, you give them the answer, and next time, well, maybe read page 2 or look at the whole thing, think about it before you respond back. So, yeah, there are a lot of cases where I could pull up charts and say, yep, that one didn't go the way I wanted. Hopefully in the future, I at least could say I did the best I could with what I had in front of me. And I didn't rush and I didn't just shortchange it. I'm also more able to, even though I've been doing this for a lot of years, call a friend. If I'm seeing something where I just not sure what I want to do, hey, I'm just going to run it by somebody. And I'll do that. And I usually feel more comfortable with my decision. And then what do you know? 6 months later, that same person calls me and goes, hey, can I run something by you? So you end up supporting your colleague when they support you. You support them. It really works out.
Is there any particular diagnosis that is hard to get right? That you find that there's a lot of that it can be easy to make a mistake with?
I'm not sure if it's make right, but how to best handle its concussion. Concussion, every concussion's got its unique nuances. And they say if you've seen one concussion, you've seen one concussion. So it's not getting it the diagnosis. I think we all know when a kid gets hit, they got a concussion. It's what do you do with it? And how I handle one for you and the next person can be totally different. And what do they bring in pre-concussion? Do they have underlying attention issues? They have issues with anxiety. Are those going to flare? Where are they in school? What do they want to do in terms of returning to activity? So it may not be, did I get it right in the diagnosis? No, I think we got the diagnosis totally fine. It's how do you manage the nuances and how much of it is the concussion? How much of it might be a learning issue that was underdeveloped or underrecognized, and now it's staring us in the face. So those are the ones that give me the most challenge. They're fascinating, and when you can help a family, they're gratified. It's kind of a gratifying experience, but they're definitely ones that make you stop and think, and the patients that you really put your time into.
So it makes me wonder. So with concussions, it, I almost wonder if it's a sliding scale. So you have people, they get a concussion, they have concussion symptoms, right? So is it possible someone almost like long-term hearing loss, can you be damaging your brain but not have any of the symptoms? And it's just, and then over time you get so much of these little things that over time could mean something, or what do you think about that?
We worry about now what we call the subconcussive impact. So let's say I'm a football lineman. On every play in practice, every play in the game, I get hit in the head. And every time I go back to the huddle, I'm okay. I know where I'm at. I don't have any buzzing in the ears. I'm not sensitive to sound. I remember the play and I keep going. And I maybe play high school. Maybe I play post high school. So you start to add up those years of subconcussive impacts. Could there be a cumulative threshold? So when I'm in my 30s or 40s, suddenly my brain doesn't work as normal. It's evolving. I think we are starting to see some evidence that, yes, multiple subconcussive impacts without ever having a true concussion can still be an issue. So I talk to families
Do you
about
think
that.
that we
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say, do you think that we don't quite have the tools invented yet to just look in someone's head and say, you're starting to get long-term effects, or is that an MRI? Or
you know, we're not quite there yet with either biomarkers or neuroimaging markers. There was a time where people wanted to measure the G force. You'd wear sensors, and every time you got hit in the head, it got over a certain G force. Hey, pull that kid out. That was a pretty hard hit. And then it was like, well, if we do that, we'd be stopping practice every play and pulling two or three kids out. That ain't going to fly. So, there would be an advantage in some ways if we had some kind of marker that we could measure longitudinally, be it imaging. And of course, they have to be fairly inexpensive, readily available. You don't have to flow 'em over to the MRI scanner every month to let us know. Or, okay, at the end of every season, if you're going to play a higher risk sport, ice hockey, soccer, football, maybe we keep checking and we can give you an idea. Okay, compared to where you were a year ago, here's what we're seeing. And, do you ever develop thresholds? I mean, this is all way down the road, but can give us more information. Unfortunately, the obvious ones, the guy who's just, I'm not as quick, the young lady who tells us, look, I can't handle sounds like I used to, or they develop, issues with functioning day to day, maybe related to sport, maybe not, but it definitely makes you stop and think.
so, let's if you won the lottery tomorrow, half a billion bucks, and never have to work again, would you still do this job?
I still enjoy going in the room, sitting down with families and talking to them. So I don't think I could just totally walk away. Yes, it would be nice to have some of the other stuff not be as big an issue and maybe be able to actually take, a fair amount of time away and spend it with my family and people I enjoy. But I still feel like when I can get into that room and talk to a family, I get some satisfaction out of it. I'm sure hoping they are. So I don't think I'd be totally done yet.
Yeah, well, I think you're in a unique career field in that you truly help other people. I know that when I've asked this question of some people, usually the answer is no, I'm out of here. If I were to win the lottery, but usually they're not in a role where they're, actually helping someone out. So I would assume there's a lot of personal satisfaction to being able to help people.
There is, there's obviously a lot of responsibility, sometimes some sleepless nights when you have this responsibility, but there are times where, You'll get somebody who just thanks you for what you've done, or you see them get back to what they want to be doing. They're back in school, they're back on the field, they've grown up, they've started their own family. Those are pretty cool experiences. And sometimes it's kind of hard to let those just go away as well.
All right. So you were the medical team physician for USA volleyball and table tennis in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. I'm curious about a lot of this. First of all, I'm curious how you ended up in that role. I know that on in your background you said the word audition, so I'm curious what would an audition even be for this, and how'd you get it?
So, how did I get there? 5 years into my career, I did a 2 week rotation in Colorado Springs Olympic Training Center. Call it an audition, but that's what it was. And essentially, that was your first entry point into the Olympic system. And if it goes well, they say, cool, you are now eligible for further consideration. And I got that positive vibe. So that was 2003. Next big milestone, 2005, men's USA volleyball moves to Anaheim, literally 10 minutes from my office. And I saw a call to arms, and we need a physician. So I applied. I'm guessing nobody else did. So I sat down with Aaron Brock, still their director of sports medicine, and we connected, and we've been colleagues and friends since then. And as a result, started working with men's volleyball, and they asked me to go to the Olympic Games. I was honored to do it. Of course, they're not just going to have you cover one sport. So I got women's volleyball. I got beach. I got table tennis. I guess if it's a ball in a net, call my name, I'm there. So it was an amazing experience, and still working with USA Volleyball. And again, looking forward to Anaheim. It's kind of like that circle has come around, and we're going to have the opportunity to do this all over again in our home city. Pretty cool.
So are you already in? If it happens again, will you be the one of the doctors for the
I still
teams?
work with him. Is it official? I'm sure if Aaron's listening right now, he's probably starting to smile, but I'd like to think I'm in that consideration pool. I'd like to think that I'll be able to participate. I look forward to and if, they decide they want somebody else, I'm still going to support them. This is a group I truly enjoy working with. And always the bottom line is what's best for the athletes. What's going to give us the best opportunity to get on that podium?
So in the '08 Olympics, is there anything you remember that stood out to you that was interesting from your job perspective?
I remember a couple things. I had colleagues give me their pieces of advice, and two that stuck out. One was make sure you get up every morning early and get your workout in, because you'll look at your schedule the next day. Oh gosh, we have opening from like 2 to 5. Guarantee you something will come up and occupy that 2 to 5 slot. But not much is going to happen at 5 or 6 a.m. So sure enough, get up early, go get your workout in. The second was you were going to have your Olympic moment. You're going to get on the plane, you're going to fly there. Yeah, I'm at the Olympic Games. You will have a moment when you realize, wait, I am at the Olympic Games. So I get there, and about 3 days in, I'm getting my workout in, and I'm running in the Olympic Village. You know how you get that runner's house? So it's like, wait, I'm at the Olympic Games. I am running in the Olympic Village. And it was like the best runner's high I've had in a long time. And I realized, hey, here we are. This is pretty cool. Here we are.
Um, the table tennis guys, any particular injury, talking tennis elbow or
Overuse,
what do
elbow,
they get?
shoulder. Yeah, they just, knees too, because you see them slide across the floor there. It's pretty amazing. I went to one table tennis match. There are 8 tables going on, and people are yelling and screaming. You have to which table are they screaming at? Because they're all moving kind of simultaneously, but the athleticism and the speed, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely impressive. I know we talked about this a little earlier, injury prevention in youth sports. Is there a preventable injury that's a common injury that is preventable that you see a lot?
I think we see a lot of shoulder, elbow issues in our overhead, our throwing athletes, be it baseball, be it softball, the volleyball hitters, the tennis athletes. And if we can, number one, keep the shoulder range of motion at an optimal level, that can reduce issues, shoulder and elbow. If we can give them some time off from throwing, Southern California, we have great weather. So we can play baseball outside 11 months a year. Is that good? Yes. Is it maybe a recipe for overload? Yes. So if we can take some of these athletes and say, look, baseball's great, but if you can take a couple months off and do something else, it's going to help your arm. It's going to help your career. Again, we're kind of going against the culture that says, hey, more is better. Time off means your opponent's actually working harder than you are. But we know that if we can reduce the number of months, give some downtime, that can help. So I like to look at my athletes. I like to look at their schedules, but I also look at their mechanics. And hey, the stuff that we do in rehab, how about we do that ahead of time? You don't have to get hurt to do this. We can hopefully reduce your injury burden.
I remember when I was younger, they said they didn't want us throwing curveballs. Was that nonsense, or is there truth to that?
A little bit of both. There are studies that show that a properly thrown curveball may put less stress on your arm than a fastball. Now let's back up. Properly thrown. Who defines that? And what I find is if I'm 11 or 12 and I can throw a proper curveball, I'm probably pretty good at it, which means that either my phone or my parents' phone is going to light up by people saying, hey, can you come and pitch for just one time? We're in a big game. Can you come pitch? So what's going to happen? You're in demand. You're going to throw more balls. You're going to throw more innings because, hey, it's pretty cool to be asked to come a guest on a team. And your arm doesn't have an odometer. So no one's really keeping score of how many pitches you're throwing. So if you've got the blessing of either having an 80-mile-an-hour fastball, never had that problem, or at 12, you can throw a wicked curve, it's both a blessing and a curse. You've got to protect it. As a parent, if you're blessed to have that kind of child, you've got to say, hey, wait, not today. Let's make sure if this is what they want to do, they're able to do it when they're 18 or older. It's kind of no fun when you've got these skills at 12 and by 14, you can't do it anymore.
So what you're saying is there's nothing wrong per se with the curveball throw itself. It's the repetitive use injuries.
It's the repetitive use. It's the, hey, I can throw a curveball and I'm pretty good at it. And someone's going to ask me to do it over and over again.
Let's talk about your podcast and YouTube channel. What's it called? And why do you do this in addition to your busy practice?
Active Kid MD is our YouTube channel. We've got a blog. I do it to teach. I do it to reach out to families to support what we do in the practice, and also to give more people an opportunity to see what we do, how we can help serve them. So it's another vehicle where you can see what the field of pediatrics and sports medicine is all about, how we provide care in that realm, and hopefully that you want to work with us. So people find us through those venues, or what we'll do is, hey, we'll have a discussion in the room and we cover a lot of material. Here's some things you can watch when you get home, or maybe one of the parents couldn't join us. They can watch this and at least see what we're talking about, see that we're legit, and hopefully there's less questions and a little bit more clarity on what we're trying to do to help your child get better.
Okay. You also you co-edited a textbook on pediatric sports medicine. Can you tell us what was the experience like, but also how did you end up involved with that?
I gave a talk at a national convention on, I think it was the top 10 pediatric sports medicine issues. And after the talk, a publisher came up and said, this is really fascinating. Could you ever see turning this into a textbook? And at the time, no, I've never really thought about it. But if you're going to help provide the platform, let's talk. That evolved into about a 2-year process. And the best part is I got to work with Dr. Valerie Wong, who's a close friend. We got a lot closer over nights of editing, discussion. I also got to recruit a bunch of colleagues nationwide and said, hey, help me out. You got to write a chapter for me. And many of them have done their own books. I've had to write chapters for them. It's a payback. But it was wonderful to connect with them, to see their expertise, to learn from them. So in the long run, I think I learned as much, hopefully, as the people who are reading the textbook. A lot of time, but a lot of value. So again, a team approach, and just enjoyed that whole process of connecting with people who are like-minded. There's not a lot of pediatric sports medicine folk in the country. So I think at the time we captured most of them, and got them involved.
So this textbook, is it still, do people still use it for reference for some
I
of the things that
believe
are in
they
there?
do. I use it in my office. I have, trainees come through and most of them say nice things, probably because they're sitting right in front of me. But I'd like to think that, we did in a question answer format. We tried to make it as practical. We wanted to make it so that, if you're going to see a patient, here are some of the things you should think about. Here's some of the common questions you're going to get. And here's hopefully easy to utilize things you can do. It wasn't really deep into hardcore anatomy and science. It was more like practical, office based, how you can help your athlete right here, right now.
Okay, so you're still run a private practice. I think those things tend to are disappearing these days. So why don't you tell us what it's like running that and how you're still doing it in private?
Private practice is not dead. There are challenges. It's definitely a fair amount of work. But when you think of the situation where you can walk in your office and make a decision, engage with your staff, and everything that happens is happening right in front of you. So we'll have patients who will call us on a Monday and they're worried about their child. They get in the same day because that's how we run things. There's no central call center. We're not obliged to have a schedule that's pre-printed for us. We make our decisions. If I want to change something about how we're doing, I make a change. Yeah, there are days where, I walk in the room and sometimes the easiest part of my day is sitting down in front of that family and I have to put aside the concerns about payroll, the concerns about are we seeing enough patients? But when you have your own practice, it motivates you. And you know that you are really trying to put the patient first. And if you do that and you provide a good level of service, you try to be efficient and responsive, your practice will grow. And I don't have to worry about is somebody going to come in and change the direction of where we go? Is somebody going to change, heck, where we practice, close down our office? I don't have to worry about that. Sure, I've got enough other worries, but I think when you have a smaller base practice that can be responsive to the needs of families, that can get kids in on a fairly quick basis, that is quick with trying to respond to phone calls or emails or portal messages, I think you're doing it right. And I enjoy it. Yes, there are some days I'm sure my wife would attest that it can be a drain or it can be a challenge. But overall, I think the process has taught me a lot. And I think it's made me a better clinician and definitely more understanding of the whole process and how we can best help serve our families.
Why do you think, can you explain why private practice is disappearing? Why are there less private practices now?
I think there was a time where the thought was if you join a bigger group, a system, you'll be part of the system. They'll take care of the HR concerns. They'll take care of your advertising. They'll take care of your rent. And by being part of a system, you'll have this automatic patient flow. We'll just siphon patients over to you. So all those things sound great. All those things sound pretty wonderful. I don't have to worry. I just show up, do my job. This is great. Unfortunately, what tends to happen is as you get into a system, there may be certain ways things are done. Decisions are made that don't really have an appreciation for what you do. And then, as we saw more system based physician employment, younger individuals who were going through their training did not get exposed to private practice. They did not see how private practice could run. So they're not comfortable or familiar with that. Then you throw in the pandemic. The pandemic did no practice any favors, but especially the private practice. How could you stay afloat when you weren't able to see patients? How were you making payroll? So a lot of practices said, hey, someone's going to throw me a lifeline and let me join their group at a time when I'm struggling. Let's go. And I can totally understand. So getting through that time where we were limited in who we could see, limited in how we could see them was a challenge, but I'm proud of my staff that we made it through and we've been able to get to a pretty good position these days.
So, I mean, a lot of people are motivated by money. So, a physician, if they join a group, are they more likely to make more money doing that? Do they see that as a possibility?
It depends on your arrangement. And again, I can't speak for everybody's contract. You could argue if I join a group and I'm pretty much guaranteed a higher patient base, that's going to help. On the other hand, there might be a contract that says, here's your salary, see whatever we throw at you. Or that salary, that contract might look really good year 1 through 3, and then something might change based on productivity. Who's judging that productivity? Who's making that final decision? In a private practice situation, people say, how you doing? Let me check my bank account. I can go through every metric under the sun, but the bottom line is when I log into Chase Bank, what is it telling me? That will tell me if we're doing well. That, and if we have patients come in who thank us for getting their kid in the same day, thank us for making the extra phone call to give them the MRI result, thank us for being there when their adolescent was going through a tough time. Those are the metrics we look at.
Do you think that with the way health insurance works, that there will come a time when it's virtually impossible to run a private practice, other than maybe catering to the rich?
I'd like to think not. I mean, there are some people who will say, yeah, private practice does cater to either the commercial insurance, those who have the ability to pay. I've got several patients who will pay cash. And yes, obviously, to run a business, you have to have a patient base that can help you support your mission. So, yes, you do sometimes wonder, is private practice? But I've got colleagues who will see a whole spectrum from commercial insurance to government based, and they do just fine. So they've found ways to make it work. They have found ways to be efficient. They have found ways to provide good care. So it is not necessarily impossible. Yes, it will have its own challenges, but by no means is it absolutely impossible.
Okay. All right, Dr. Chris Couture. I think we covered about everything we can hit. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been very enlightening about your career field.
Well, Shane, thank you so much. When you get a chance like this, it gives you a chance to reflect, and that's a good thing. So, thank you for giving me a chance to share my journey, and hopefully, it will inspire others. And I appreciate what you're doing. Again, sports medicine is a team thing. So, thank you for helping me be part of that team.
And that was Dr. Chris Koutures, a pediatric and sports medicine specialist from Orange County, California. I really appreciate him taking his time out to come on the show, and I hope you enjoyed him also. And if you enjoyed this content, please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think about the show. And if you have an interesting job and you'd like to be on the show, then email me at talesfromtheshiftpodcast.com, and I'll get you on here.